My name is also Jakob, and I'm a programmer here at the festival. And I am personally very much looking forward to having this morning with you, you who are cinematographer behind many of my favorite films. Oslo, August 31st, to mention one, but also James Ponsol's a bit overlooked film, End of the Tour, and maybe one of the greatest drama series of all time, Chernobyl. So it will be very interesting to pick your brain for an hour or so. But first, let's look at a little trailer. The plan for this hour is a bit loose. We're going to talk about your impressive career, of course. This Jakob has a few questions I want to get answers to, and I know this Jakob has a few clips to show us, and I hope you have questions too, and I think we will have time for all of it. We'll save most of your questions till the end, but if there's something you want Jakob to clarify along the way, please raise your hand and we can go back to it. So let's jump right into it. If we would write the very first chapter of the story of the cinematographer Jakob Ihre, where would it start?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me here, and thanks for being part of this. I'm not sure if it's a masterclass attached, but it's a kind of discussion among all of us. So yeah, super happy to be in Stockholm talking to you all about this. Yeah, where to start? Well, maybe we should all start in Gothenburg, where I kind of grew up. My mother was very much into the arts, and my father was traveling a lot in work. And when he came back from Asia, he was able to buy one of the first VHS cameras from Hitachi and Sony from Japan. So he kind of brought the kind of cinema to our home with this camera, and my mother was always a big cineast and kind of lover of culture and arts, and that kind of started it all. I think in blue collar Gothenburg, we were the first family, I think, that subscribed to Vogue, the fashion magazine, and the reason for that was, according to my mother, that they had a very good film review section in this Vogue magazine. I didn't read those reviews at that time, but that was kind of the official reason why we were subscribing to Vogue in the early 80s. Yeah, that's how it started. I started to make films with friends, like you maybe also have done in kind of the early teens, and my local library, for some odd reason, had all the back issues of a cinematographer magazine. And the reason to read that was not really to learn more about cinematography, it was more to get access or to see clips of kind of the behind the scenes of film shoots. So at that time, kind of the word cinematography didn't really exist as such, it was more about directors. So that's kind of how it all started. the madness about cinema, but never really realizing that you could be something else than a director. So, and towards in high school, I kind of knew from kind of you feel that, I guess, as a director that I'm not a director. I felt, and I'm not going to pursue that path. So so I didn't, and I was kind of focused on my studies, and I was meant to attend this psychology program in Uppsala, like a 5-year program. But prior to that, I thought, let's just work a bit and let's see what happens. And then through contacts, I got a job as a trainee at a production company at a TV program called Efterlyst, like Wanted, like a Swedish version of America's Most Wanted. And I thought, okay, let's just do that. And before I do my 5-year program, and then for some reason the budget dropped suddenly for this TV production company to make these shows. So they thought, well, Jakob, he seems to be mad about cinema and he's really enthusiastic about cameras and all that, so why don't we just, as we can't afford these really good, experienced TV cameramen to make these reconstructions, let's give this beta camera to Jakob, and maybe he can, help us, to survive our budget, And then suddenly I was kind of in the industry, I guess, or at least in this kind of TV world of making reconstructions of crimes and of accidents. There was another kind of sister show called Larmet Går, called kind of the alarm goes, where they were reconstructing not just crimes but kind of some small accidents, like a tractor accident or a fire in some apartment, or even a kind of small kind of gas leak in a local small factory or something like that. So it's quite funny that like 25 years later I got to reconstruct a kind of a bigger accident. So it's it's all kind of full circle somehow. So that's kind of how it all started.
That's your origin story.
Yeah.
Do you remember like a particular moment where you felt like film is going to be my career now? This is going to be my life. I'm going to do this for a living. I got these reminders from university. Why don't you show up at the start of this program? And I kept on getting these reminders, and then suddenly I realized, well, I'm actually doing what I want to do, which I've been doing since I was 12 years old, and I just realized, I can become a cinematographer. And it's so strange, I didn't realize that until I was kind of 18, 19, as I've been reading the American cinematographer when I was 14, but I never realized somehow that I could become a cinematographer. So I don't know if that was an answer to your question. But yeah. No, you are one.
Yeah.
I know we talked about before this conversation a subject that we might return to, the subject of inspiration, and I know you've been thinking quite a lot about where your images sort of come from and what inspired you to make them the way you did. Some things might go back to something as early as childhood, and it just got me curious about if there's any particular scenes or anything that you look back on that you sort of feel like it came from your childhood.
I mean, that's so interesting when you make this, when you kind of go through the material that we're talking about today, and you look at your last films that you've been shooting, and then you're realizing, going back to kind of earlier films, that it's kind of that you actually start to repeat yourself, and you're realizing that what you've done at the very beginning is kind of what you have continued doing in some way or another. And also in terms of what you have experienced as a teenager, the movies you watch at that time is still kind of shaping you, or still kind of influencing you in some way. And I thought we can watch a clip from Spaceman where, or maybe it's just first interesting to look at like at a frame grab from this movie called Chariots of Fire, Triumphens ögonblick, which was a film that was shown on television in the 80s not every weekend, but it was, I must have seen like 5-6 times as a child. And there's an image from that one. I don't know if you can find that shot. It's from Spaceman folder, and it's called Chariots of Fire reference.
Yep.
And so that's a projector, and that's something that is screening on the wall. So now we have seen that. So now we can maybe play the clip from Spaceman, and that's maybe we can play sensor light projection. Yeah, so this was a film that we shot during COVID, and I don't know how many of you have seen it, but it's about this man played by Adam Sandler lost in space, and he's all alone in this spacecraft. And of course, you have these discussions on how should this look and how should we shoot all this, and one big question was how should there be any presence of the sun or of a star, or how lonely is he? Is he so far away from any star or source of light that no light is able to enter the windows of this aircraft or the spacecraft. So the conclusion was to let's pretend that he's so far away, so lonely that so he's all no available light is coming through the windows. So there was one kind of building block for the look of this film. And also that's also something interesting in theory to go that way, but it's also, but I'm asking myself, maybe we shoot ourselves in the foot somehow by not letting any highlights come through the windows. So sometimes you have this kind of good ideas that might sound very interesting, but then visually it might actually be a bad idea. But maybe it was a good idea in the end, I'm not sure, but that's quite interesting. And another point was that as you can see here, the sensor lights. So that was not in the script that there would be kind of motion sensor lights in this aircraft, in the spacecraft. And that was something that came up like 4 months before the shoot, where I was in a situation where suddenly I was still in the room and the lights went off, and then I moved my hand and they came on again as magic. And I thought, hey, that could be quite interesting for this spacecraft of ours. And that's a way how to, can we build contrast and can we build a look based on that, And then the second thing, or the third one, was which you saw a clip from. Which you saw a still from Chariots of Fire, was this of screens. I mean, there are a lot of LED screens on this spacecraft, and in the script, he's talking to his family and colleagues back on Earth on these LED panels, like a Skype call or Zoom call. And then we also thought, or I thought, okay, let's go for that, I guess. That's how he looks. But then suddenly I realized, hey, in Chariots of Fire, which I saw 30 years ago, that kind of image was kind of imprinted somehow in my memory. In that one, they had this projector projecting an image on the wall. And so I mentioned that to the production designer, what about that? And then he said, or we all thought, well, maybe that's not logical to have a big, that you should have a, it's all about having space on in the spacecraft and not to block equipment and stuff. So, but then we thought, well, you can maybe project it straight on the wall. It doesn't need to be a projector screen as such. You can just project it on the wall. You can project it on the equipment or on a cupboard or something. And so maybe in terms of logic, it maybe makes sense. And then also this story is set in some kind of a parallel universe, so they could have video projectors in this spacecraft, as it's not a kind of real spacecraft. So that was kind of ideas, and that's also interesting how you then, to the director, producers, and production designer, how you sell that idea. Because you feel very strongly about this this would be fantastic if you can do this, if you can have motion sensor lights, and if you can have projectors with screens in the spacecraft, it would be really, really visually interesting. And how should I mention that to the director? Should I just say it while we're having lunch? By the way, this could be fun, but then there's a risk that he will or she will say won't really be listening fully, or not take it fully seriously. But so I found that more and more interesting.
Maybe strategic and pick
yeah,
the perfect
I know, and maybe
time.
it's. I don't know why it's become like that, but it's become you can't just. It's so important, these little things. You really have to choose you have to choose your moment when you want to tell this, and how should you present it, and so it's almost like a pitch in itself, And I don't know if that's after shooting so many commercials and reading treatments, where directors are trying to sell the project. Suddenly, I'm realizing I also have to sell this kind of visual ideas, or it's like why you want to shoot on a specific lens, or use certain tools that. You want the director to be on board on that and to fully understand it, so you really have to present that in a good way.
Mm. So you're also a salesman sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. To really make your ideas as such, but to make the things you believe in to be taken seriously and to be carefully kind of chosen. So you can see another clip about these motion sensors, which is quite funny, but I think it's almost kind of the highlight of the movie somehow, in terms of lighting. So it's a clip, a sensor bathroom, where you see that idea. So that's my kind of moment of glory in the film, when this happens, And that's good. And then we can show another clip called clip projector. So in the script, this was written as a scene where he's watching a monitor, watching a LED screen. But then, because of this idea of projectors and projecting on the wall, we had a scene, we got a scene like this. Can you hear me, by the way? Is it all? Yeah. Okay, we can stop there. But it's not only lighting devices; it also affects the story. With this light, with the sensor lights that is a man alone in his aircraft in space. Or I want to say aircraft in the spacecraft, and he's questioning if he's really alone or not. So then we were playing with the sensor lights. So he's alone. He's at the end of the corridor. Suddenly the lights comes on in the background, and you think, oh, is he alone, or is there someone else on the spacecraft? So it's kind of. This idea had, somehow they had to rewrite or tweak the script for this motion sensor light effect to work. Another kind of interesting aspect in this film are the kind of the memories. So if you go to clip memory. Yeah, we can stop.
commit to a price if it can be.
Surprise.
Yeah, so in this film there are a lot of kind of flashbacks or kind of scenes of memory, and remember during kind of pre-production we were talking about how do we visualize memory. We kind of both thought that somehow in an arrogant way, I guess, that always kind of childish to make an effect of these memories. Let's just play it as it is, and let's shoot it as like we shoot the kind of the live kind of the live event. Let's just shoot it for real, and people will understand it's a memory. And to use filters and prisms in front of the lens, we have done that too many times, and we're so bored of it, and it's a little bit silly to do it. So let's just play it straight. So with our kind of combined experience, that's what kind of we wanted to go for. But then during all these kind of test screenings, this is for Netflix, and they did a lot of test screenings for good or bad. But one of the big main comments were that people didn't understand that it was a memory. So then I heard from the visual effects supervisor that, sorry Jakob, we're gonna mess up your image here. And I thought, okay, what we're gonna? Well, I hope you won't put this kind of lens baby, kind of strange lens effect on it, because that will look really cheap. Well, it's something like that, but and all right. So I got really scared. But in the end, so what you're seeing here is actually what they've done, in CGI.
Okay.
It's a heavy digitized lens effect. I don't know hopefully we get time to watch this film, but what I feel though is I feel really happy with it. I think this is great, but I do still feel the same, that if you had used lens prisms and other kind of in front of the camera effect, it would have looked wrong somehow. Then, so I do believe what they managed to do here is much more effective and better than if you had done it in camera, which would have always looked, Anyway, so that's really interesting also, that you can be so wrong during this pre-production stage, and it might sound good and it might sound very, like a rational decision, but you are, many times you're very wrong.
I know you said you have this sort of mantra that you should approach every new project as a blank canvas, completely open to the director's vision and without any similarities from previous projects, but that you've sort of realized yourself, looking back, that the Jakob Ihre canvas might not always be white from the beginning. It might have stains or scratches, or it was very well put of you to say that it might be gray, but when you move between films. It would be interesting to hear. We can move on to some images from Chernobyl, just to hear what sort of colors you had when you moved into that project. I think there's
Should we watch the stills, so what do you want to do?
Yeah, let's do the Chernobyl montage, or the collage that's called Chernobyl, just with all the stills. There you go. Because this is the documentary.
So
you can tell us about it.
So this documentary is shot in Odessa in Ukraine in like 2001, and that's a 3-part documentary which is shot in Odessa and in Ashdod, which is the brighter. Where to start? Basically, when we were prepping Chernobyl, we were in Lithuania in an apartment, and we were doing kind of lens and lighting tests in the actual apartment. We will be shooting a couple of weeks later, and we were playing around with the LUTs of this Alexa camera, and it didn't feel right somehow. And then in the end, while playing around with the Kelvin and with tweaking the LUTs, I felt, this feels authentic. This should be, this is really how Ukraine should look like. And when I did that, I was realizing at the same time that, it's actually, I'm going back to what I experienced almost 20 years earlier in Odessa, which was the reality, I thought. You see those pictures up there of the man in yellow? That looks quite similar to the beginning of Chernobyl, which I didn't bring here, of Legasov, who is, so I thought, okay, so we are kind of creating realism by following the documentary. But then what was interesting about the documentary was that it was shot on 16 with a very strong storm filter. At the time it was quite popular with this blue-green storm filter called Storm by Tiffen. So, which I kind of forgotten about. So when I was in my mind, the Odessa, the documentary, that was kind of authentic and real, but actually it was heavily, tweaked even at that time. So it's just interesting how that kind of shaped somehow the look of Chernobyl. Do you follow? Or yeah. So, and the other main part was the light. Overall in Chernobyl is very dim and overcast, but we have this strong this kind of sunlight coming through, and that was somehow inspired by during pre-production where we saw this big mural. I don't know if you can zoom into that mural. It's from the street there of Kiev.
I think we have it as a separate picture, so maybe open one more if
But
you can. Might be easier.
No, that's Chernobyl. So,
Okay,
so that's
yeah, in the Chernobyl folder, yeah.
yeah, this one. Now this lamppost is blocking the atom, but basically it's the atom on that mural and the rays of light from the atom. So that kind of gave us the idea, or that hey, maybe the atom, maybe the radioactivity should be illustrated as light. So throughout the film, if you go back to the stills, throughout the film, the sunlight or the overexposure is where the radioactivity is. So towards the end of the film of Chernobyl, they're going up to the roof of the reactor, which is when they come out, which is a very overexposed area. So throughout that was kind of, we were led by that idea that the radioactivity is basically light. So I think that mural gave us the idea, but then I also realized looking at Odessa last night, you see those very overexposed sections from Odessa, if you bring those out with a man there in white. So the second part of this documentary is shot in Israel and about these Ukrainian refugees in Israel who are they're almost kind of set on a strange planet, they feel, in this very strong desert sun. So if you click on them, so you can see some of those images. So, yeah, you can click on here. So then I realized that already then this idea of people being kind of burnt by the sun had already started during this documentary, where it was a documentary, but still we tried to stylize it, but try to make it more cinematic by adding these kind of elements. So you can see some more stills there of number 9 there as well. So here we had like a small HMI, like a 1.2 HMI coming through the windows to give the idea that even when she's in the shelter of her own house, in her apartment in Ashdod in Israel, the sun is still kind of coming through and kind of burning her. And the pictures on the wall are from Odessa that she's kind of dreaming about, and you can see that the sunlight is kind of is burning her memories of Odessa. So, and another idea of this, the sun or the rays of sun as radioactivity might also have come from watching horror movies like The Fog and the Stephen King ones, where the fog is kind of entering the city and is kind of the danger or is the monster somehow. So it's interesting at least for me, to know where did we get this idea of the sun being relativity? Is it because of the mural, or is it thanks to I did this documentary 20 years earlier, or is it that watching The Fog, this horror movie, was it those moments I gave us the idea to use the light in this way?
Yeah, but because it of course becomes very central. How do you, in a series like this, portray the invisible monster, which is of course radioactivity? As a visual artist, how do you do that? And I think that's one of the poetic aspects of this series, the way you use light and contrast. And I know you talked about that darkness might be a safer place, and light is it connotes danger in this in this accident, and also how particles in the you see particles in the air, how those become scary because you sort of know that the air might be toxic, and how you sort of found that idea.
I mean that's
going back and tracing it.
So if you go back to sorry, a lot of flipping back and forth. If you go back to that image, the Chernobyl folder, if you can see that Chernobyl folder again. So this shot is actually not, or this scene is not in the movie actually. It's from the rushes, and this is Legasov, who played by Harris. Unfortunately, he kind of commits suicide, and one of the kind of KGB agents standing there finds him in his apartment. So until then, all the scenes in his apartment are shot kind of in the shade, or they're kind of dark apartment. But from the moment we see him, the moment after the accident, you see how the sun kind of fades into the apartment through the curtains. And as the film kind of progresses, more and more sun is coming into the apartment. So the idea at the very end of the show, at least of the script, as this is not this never ended up in the film, but in the script, this is the last scene. The idea was that the room should be completely flooded with light, and he would be overexposed, almost like he's been the monster of the relativity is it's kind of sitting on him or destroying him somehow. But that was also, like you said before, how to convince the director to be part of this journey and to believe in this, and that's the second. Well, that's the hardest part because you really need the director's blessing to go ahead with this. Especially when the director is mostly never really used sunlight in his previous projects. So it's interesting to light this way, when you don't just have to light for as per the script, where it's kind of sunny afternoon or overcast day, that you also light for there's some kind of a theme or a kind of a concept behind your lighting. But of course, every film doesn't have to have that. But it's I find it quite fun to do that way.
Should we move? We might come back to Chernobyl, but should we move on to one of my personal favorites that I mentioned, End of the Tour by James Ponsonby. It's about a Rolling Stone writer who follows the acclaimed novelist David Foster Wallace on his book tour for the novel Infinite Jest. And we can look at the trailer just to get a sense of what that film looked like.
When I think of this trip, I see David and me in the front seat of his car. He wants something better than he has. I want precisely what he has already.
David Wallace, welcome to Minneapolis.
Hi, I'm David Losey.
Oh, hi. Okay, David and David.
We only just met. He's writing a piece on the tour. What's this story about in your mind?
Just what it's like to be the most talked about writer in the country. That's the real thing.
You're like a nervous guy, huh?
No, I'm okay. How are you?
I'm terrified.
I gotta ask, what is with the vendetta?
I know that it's a security blanket for me whenever I'm kind of afraid my head is going to explode. If we ate like this all the time, what would be wrong with that?
It's like good, seductive commercial entertainment, like Die Hard.
First I Heard?
First I Heard.
Great
Yes,
film.
no, it's a brilliant
The
film.
best.
Hey, isn't it reassuring to have a lot of people read you?
I think if a book is about anything,
Yeah.
it's about the question of why. Why am I doing it? And what's so American about what I'm doing?
If they're responding to your work and your work is really personal, then reading you is another way of meeting you, isn't that right?
That's so good.
Thank you.
I think that if there's a sort of sadness for people under 45, it has something to do with pleasure and achievement and entertainment. Like a sort of emptiness at the heart of what they thought was going on. I got a real serious fear of being a certain way. I treasure my regular guyness.
You don't crack open a 1,000-page book because you heard the author is a regular guy. You do it because he's brilliant.
What is with you?
What is with you?
I'm not so sure you want to be me. Just be a good guy. The more people think you're really great, the bigger the fear of being a fraud is.
David thought books existed to stop you from feeling lonely. Living those days with him reminded me of what life is like. And the conversation is the best one I ever had.
It's me, talking into the tape recorder. I'm smoking, having just said I wouldn't smoke, I'm smoking. Just me and your tape recorder.
I rewatched this the other day and with other lens, looking more at the cinematography and how you sort of capture Illinois and Minneapolis. And I thought it felt almost like Sweden. There's a pale winter light and there's something in the way you capture conversation and people. I don't know. I haven't grew up. I'm not raised in Indianapolis or Illinois. But I was thinking about the Nordic sensibility that it feels like you bring to this, and also to Louder Than Bombs that you did with Joachim Trier that we might look at later. Do you feel like you bring some Swedish or Nordic look sometimes, or how do you?
For me, the biggest thing about this film and about the cinematography is that it's been kind of elevated thanks to really the music. I mean, it's by Danny Elfman, Tim Burton's composer who's done all his films, I think, is a big fan of David Foster Wallace, the author. And when he heard about that we were making a film about his favorite writer, he said, okay, of course, I would love to do a soundtrack. And so I really feel that score, and also hearing R.E.M., that kind of really elevates, well, of course, the entire film, but you know the cinematography, which is quite mundane in a kind of gritty, grey, brownish Illinois, Michigan. I think I've been praised for almost the wrong reasons, but it's a lot of a lot to do with that the music is kind of is enhancing and supporting or pushing the images to something much better than they really are. It's a interesting project. I remember getting the call middle of the night from the director, who was a big fan of Oslo, August 31st. The way we kind of dealt with light and faces, and at that time, which often happens, is that you're never really, or very few times, you are the first choice. I mean, his DOP there was some emergency, unfortunately, with his family, so he had to leave, so I was kind of called in 2 weeks before the shoot. And I think I even said, I'm sorry, I can't come, thanks for the offer, but I can't. But then next day, I kind of thought about it, leaving the kids in kindergarten, maybe I should, like this, and maybe what should I do? Maybe I should go anyway. And then I showed up just 2 weeks before the shoot, and entering the production office, and I see James Ponstad, the director, standing there tearing pages of the script. I said, what's happening? And he said, well, we have to cut some scene, we have to cut 10 pages. Okay, yeah, but I love this guy cutting all this. No, we only have 35 days or 32 days to shoot this film, and according to the schedule, we are 6 days above something like that. And that's also very interesting how to. Sorry, this is not at all an answer to your question, but it's very interesting how. That's what it's all about, really. How much time do you have on each day to shoot this, and how clever can the director or everyone be to to really, if there's, well, to really only shoot what's going to end up in the on screen. If you can calculate that, then you're, you know, then you have, then you are, you know, that's on the way to make a good movie maybe, or it's all about the time and how to, yeah, how much time you have per day, you know. How many. But in terms of cinematography, yeah, I mean, it's a film about memory, and just like Spaceman, it's yeah, it's about memory, and it's been shot with kind of old faded lenses to kind of create that feel. And the director was showing me clips from One Kind Why movies, Happy Together, and so we talked about, you know, pushing the memory in terms of color and to make it kind of larger than life. So you know, we were pushing the film to make it more saturated, and we tried to. Even though we were shooting in a very boring space or grey Michigan, we tried to, you know, enhance it and make it more special than it was. So it's yeah.
You did a great job. And speaking of memories, another director dealing with memory in his film is a great collaborator of you, Jakob Ihre, who you met in the National Film School in England.
Yeah.
And you moved on to creating 4 features together: Reprise, Oslo, August 31st, Louder Than Bombs, and Thelma. Maybe you could say something about how you guys found each other and what this collaboration has meant for you and your work.
Yeah, we met at NFTS, at the National Film Television School in England, or in London. And we did our graduation film together called Proctor, which is on YouTube. I think it's interesting to see that film, that short film. And no, he's an amazing director, and he's kind of the definition of a director in a sense that he's, or what is the definition of a director? But he's really he directs every part. You know, he's great on sound and well, he directs every part. I mean, most directors do, I guess. But and it's okay if you don't also. But he really is into everything, and that's what really makes the cinematography, you know, so much better in many ways. That he's very aware of the cinematography, and we might see a clip here from a film from Oslo where I mean, one of the main powers of in his work is that he writes for his writing is for specific places. You know, many of his films are set in Oslo, so when in the writing, the scenes are written for a specific place. So when you go location hunting, you're not really hunting locations. You know where you're going to be, and you know whether you know it's been written for a specific place, and so that helps a lot in the kind of translation from script to images. Where you don't have to, you know, the adaptations are much easier somehow because it's been written for that, for a specific.
Should we look at the clip from Oslo, August 31st, or from Reprise, or which one do you want to start with?
Well, you can look at the cafe scene, I guess.
Okay, the cafe scene.
Lese en fantastisk god bok som setter så dype spor at jeg husker sitater fra det resten av livet. Maler sinnssykt bra bilder som sier noe om hvordan jeg hadde det i gjerningsøyeblikket. Dekker en hel vegg med bilder, sitater og andre ting som har plass i hjertet mitt. Eier alle sesongene av mine yndlingsserier. Å få oppmerksomhet rundt en sak som er viktig for meg, og hvor mange mennesker klarer på hva jeg har å si. Det står oppe i fallskjerm, fly et helikopter, nakenbade, og en behagelig jobb som jeg trives i, og som jeg gleder meg til hver dag. Synes å bli fridd til på en romantisk og spesiell måte. Sove under åpen himmel, på Besseggen, spille i en film, eller spille et stort stykke på Nationaltheatret. Vinne over 1 million i lotto. Lage nyttige ting som jeg har bruk for hver dag, og være elsket.
Well, that scene much longer, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting with that one. That was shot in 2 days, and the first day we had, we could afford to have complete control of the cafe, and on the second day we only had our table where he was sitting, where we were able to, when the cafe was open, and we were able to use our extras or use the kind of real people in the cafe. So in that sense, it's kind of a mix of capturing techniques of shooting it controlled and not controlled, and that makes it quite interesting. Also, I don't know if you, earlier in that scene, he's sitting there as well. He's kind of more lit than in his close-ups, and that's also and also this last shot that you saw how he exits the cafe. You saw that, right?
We can play. There's a full scene. You can play it without sound, maybe, if you want to talk about it. Maybe it's easier.
No, it's okay.
It's okay.
Fine. Yeah, it's fine. But you saw that last scene where he was going out of the cafe, and that shot is also kind of stylized. So that's also what he likes to do, to mix not just the technique of the setup, how to capture, but also the shots and the light itself. So at moments there are like a naturalistic light on Anders, and sometimes you're having this kind of harder, more stylized light. And there are some handheld shots of him sitting there, and there's also this that you saw, this very last graphic track of being inside a cafe and coming out out to the exterior. Yes, I mean, so there's a lot of kind of different techniques used in the same scene, which is very interesting to do. So while we are shooting this, we are referring to art house movies, but at the same time there are reference to Michael Bay, and so it's a big mixture of sources of inspiration.
Yeah. I don't know if any of you here are also film school dropouts, but I myself have an unfinished master thesis from this very building about the form and style of Joachim Trier's film. So maybe you can help me finish and answer how you work with, or maybe how your discussions were about, because Joachim's film deals a lot with the internal and external images and memories, dreams, and it's, as you saw in these pictures. Maybe we didn't have subtitles, but so everyone didn't understand Norwegian. But flowing in and out of different people's interior worlds, and then out to the exterior, and somewhere in between, and that's very interesting. I guess part of it is found in the edit, but a lot has to be found on set as well. I guess so. Please help me finish my.
Well, you can look at those floor plans.
So I can graduate.
Yeah, fine. You can look at those floor plans in the beginning. If you go to number 1, clip number 1, I think that's they're quite boring floor plans, but it's extremely well prepared and scouted. On many movies, it's hard to revisit the location. You don't have the permit to do it, but if you're in Oslo or in a smaller city, you can very easily just go to that place with a little camera. And you can, shoot it. 2 months before the actual shoot, you can shoot it with stand-ins and be extremely well prepared, so you can improvise, when you actually, doing the scene. And also this film, Oslo, there was also kind of a reaction somehow to Reprise. Reprise was Joachim's first film, which it's much more kind of dynamic in its kind of use of visuals. And we tried many more things and tried to be more not experimental, but we were really for us, we were kind of discovering cinema for some way for us, and while Oslo, once again, we got not bored of ourselves, but we thought, okay, let's be more subtle and let's not try to push our point, and let's keep to one kind of eye throughout the film, by not changing formats and textures and techniques. It's just be as subtle and careful with our framings and lighting as possible. So if this has been his first film, it might have looked very differently. Where we might have been more eager to not show our skills, but to try out different more techniques. But as Reprise, we were trying so many things, we almost kind of got somehow bored with it, or at least we thought we had matured, so now we can tell the story in a more simple way.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of ideas in Reprise merged together, but you, in between the punky scenes, you sort of find the poetic sensibilities that is both in your work and in Joachim Trier's work. Do you want to show something from Reprise, or? Yeah,
we can show the intro, which is
the Joachim Trier's first feature then that you shot as well, from 2006.
This was not the proper scene as such, but this is the intro to Reprise, and once again it's a kind of mix of shooting techniques where that's a real 17 maj, with real people shot at in slow motion, 150 frames per second, and then we have also planted our own extras in that crowd, and I remember this was shot like 5 years after film school, and in that kind of folder of source of inspiration, we had Philip Corsa di Lorca, the still photographer who maybe early 90s his claim to fame was this street work of people on the streets of Manhattan that he captured through flashes. So they are kind of you see people on the streets and they have a very strong light on them. And somehow I think we were inspired by that. So you can see, when those highlights of those kids running around, that's actually us, carrying an HMI and with a small generator on the gaffer's back and making those kind of effects, which is again, it's got some similarities to what you've seen in Chernobyl with those highlights, and so it's kind of a little theme that that's been going on for a long while.
It was hard to see because it was kind of low res, but was it Joachim Trier standing there on the side?
No,
it wasn't.
I don't think so. No.
I couldn't see from here. Should we watch another clip from Louder Than Bombs?
Or
do you want to show something else?
Or Thelma.
Or Thelma. Sure.
If you want.
Yeah.
Maybe we can show some stills first, maybe.
Okay. Some stills. Maybe the one called Thelma, where you have all the...
I guess it's a lot of talk about lighting now, but I guess that's why we're here.
You are a cinematographer, so...
So, So here, there was also an idea about Thelma, who's kind of carrying the superpowers without her really, she's not aware of it yet until the end of the film. And so this was kind of an arc that we played around with throughout the film. Can you hear me? Or yeah. That she's kind of in the shade again here. She's kind of, there's no sunlight hitting her, and she looks kind of not depressed, but she doesn't know what's going on with her. And but then we had these ideas of that's a kind of the Annunciation, famous kind of that's been running around in the history of art. Of I think it's the angel Gabriel who's giving the kind of the blessing to Maria. I think that she's kind of pregnant with Jesus. So that came. That gave us the idea somehow, I guess, that towards the end of the film, she's kind of getting blessed and she's aware of her powers. Just like in Superman, there's another little frame grab there of Selma. I can see those. Up there. It's a film by David Singer where Superman is kind of low on energy and he flies up to the sun and he's getting kind of regenerated, or he's getting his powers again when he's been hit by the sun. So if you play the clip now from Selma, you might understand better what I mean.
Tom?
So this is the very end of the film, so sorry for the spoilers, but this is actually the first time that the sun hits her. So this is the kind of the Annunciation painting that you saw earlier, which kind of inspired us a bit to do this scene, or to shoot it this way. And this is the first flare in the film coming up also. Let's see. Oh, can you stop that?
Thelma, Jakob. Thelma. Thelma.
And we can just pause here for a second. So here we kind of failed here, I guess. I mean, me and the gaffer, we were really, we were hoping that we would have sun this day to get to make our idea fully work, And then, we tried to put up lights on the side, but I guess the budget didn't make it possible for us to have, big enough lights to give her that highlight on her, on her face to have a kind of continuation to this idea of her empowerment through light. But so somehow we fail at the end here, but maybe the audience won't notice.
Yeah. Time really flies. I'm not sure that we'll have time to show clips from all the films, but maybe should we open up for some questions?
Yeah.
To see if there's questions in the audience, so you guys get a chance to talk as well in the front here. Maybe I think we have a great.
Yeah, hi Jacob. Nice for you to be here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
My question is actually, when you work with directors, do they usually come with a clear vision with editing, cinematography, sound, and then you together talk about this and you enhance with your profession and all that?
It's all extremely different. It's I mean, someone like you, Joachim, who is extremely well prepared and you know he's written the script himself with his co-writer Eskil, so they're extremely well prepared and got a great knowledge of cinema and of cinematography. He's still extremely well beautiful in that way that he wants your he wants lots of he wants your time. He wants months and months of pre-production where you can give you all your ideas and enhance and to have a dialogue about the look of the film. So I mean, like they're all different kinds of directors. Some directors don't really know what they want, so yeah, what should I say? It all depends on the director. With Johan, who did Chernobyl and Spaceman, he makes this mood board. Very kind of amazing mood board with clips, or not clips, but kind of stills from different kinds of not films as such, mostly kind of paintings and to create a mood, and then you build on that. But that mood board, which was that he had prepared for months, didn't have any there were no highlights in those mood boards, and and in the end, the film has a lot of those highlights and those burnouts and overexposure which didn't exist in the mood board, and it varies so much. You just have to. It's like a dance. You just have to wait to give those ideas, and maybe you don't have the ideas, and maybe the ideas will be formed when you are actually shooting. Yeah, it all varies. I mean, you also get, the last film I did was the Umesh Chronicles, an Indian film, and that one we just didn't want to have not even a folder of references. We just want to take it as decide things on the day, and there were no short lists and no kind of breakdowns as such. We just wanted to fill it out somehow, but the big kind of mantra was to not to impose a vision on things, just to let it be. So I don't know if I managed to answer the question really, but it's
but does it matter for you which way it goes, or is it? Do you prefer any way, or is it? It's interesting anyway.
No, I prefer it. Well, I prefer that it should feel like the director's ideas. And it's so important that the director is fully aware of that. In the end, when you are shooting a film, I feel it's my film because the director's managed to, to give all his ideas and enthusiasm and background onto me, so I feel I'm shooting my film almost. And I want the director to feel the same about the lighting and about the lenses and framing, that they should feel that it's a natural choice for them. Sorry about.
No, that was a good question.
Yeah.
That was a good answer. So you prefer a little bit more that they have a little bit of a vision still.
Yeah, for sure. No, I really want the director to it should come. Everything should come from the director somehow, and of course, I did an episode on a TV show where the director let the cinematographer do the blocking and the mise en scène. And you are trained to do that as cinematographers, but in order for it to become really, really good, or if you're making a complicated move, it needs kind of direction behind it. And then suddenly I will start to, then in order for the shot to work, I will have to ask the actors to come through this door. And suddenly I feel I'm overstepping. And then the director might be okay with it, but there are moments when the director said no, but suddenly I know that the person should come from that door, and suddenly the shot doesn't work. So I really, I actually prefer a director who is extremely knowledgeable and who dictates the shots and make a shot list and even have have lighting ideas. I think that's it's because it's really feel like it's the director's film, So but even if there's a director who exactly knows about everything, you still feel a space for you to contribute and to make it feel that's your own at the same time.
We have more questions.
Thank you. I agree.
Also in the front here, I think. Or
so, what would be your strength, your particular strength as a cinematographer, according to you?
Well, the strength is what is your eye. That's your strength. Is your eye, and I started out in documentaries and doing these reconstructions as well. But a lot of documentaries and that's also how you started. With your first VHS camera to shoot a family, wedding or a christening that you thought, or at least people, relatives told you, oh, you have a good eye and you find good moments and you see things in a certain way. So that's kind of what you grew up with, the idea of, you join the film school because you feel you have some kind of an eye or a talent, or you see things in a certain way. But then after many years, you're asking yourself this question when I was doing this American TV show, which I just wrapped last week, where you are setting you have this enormous studio, enormous set where you have thousands of hundreds of lights, and you have to set these lights to be up there in the ceiling for seasons to come. So I'm being hired of course, to do my episodes, but also to set the look and to set the infrastructure of all these lights for years to come. And I asked my gaffer, is this what I'm good at? I've been hired to do this, but is this actually what I'm good at? I thought my strength is at least my eye. I thought how I see things, but is my strength really to decide, that should be a 10K or that should be a 20K, and that should be a LED wall, which is my duty on a film or a TV show, part of my duty.
So I also meant compared to other cinematographers. Maybe it's difficult for you to answer by why would the director choose you instead of another cinematographer?
I don't know. I have to.
You have to be a salesman now again.
I don't know. Why would they? I guess they're inspired by films that I've shot. So I get that's what. No, but you're part of. You do many interviews not every month, but you interview for projects, and some projects you get, and most you don't get, and you don't really know the answer why they don't hire you for that. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Do you have more questions? Can we go a little bit over time, or do we have to wrap up?
Yeah.
We have to wrap up now?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, you have to keep asking questions to Jakob outside, I guess, if you have time to stay.
Oh, for sure.
Because there's another session scheduled tightly after this one. So, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to pick your brain, Jakob.
Thank you. Thanks a
we
lot.
look forward to other questions.